Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Recently I posted this photo of a northern flicker singing in the morning, and I also posted these two photos of song sparrows singing on a cold morning, and I got a ton of messages, requests, and emails asking how do you photograph a bird's breath. And honestly, once you know what you're looking for, it's actually really easy to get these photos. All you're waiting for is the right condition. When I got my song sparrow photo, I just kept checking the weather network because I was looking for another day where I could potentially get more bird breath photos. So it gets really addicting over time. But in this video, I'm just going to cover everything you need to know, break it down so you guys can go out yourself and get some awesome bird breath photos. Stay tuned. Alright, so let's start with the conditions that you'll need to get this type of photo. And the first one is a fairly obvious one. It needs to be cold enough. But it doesn't need to be as cold as you might think. When I posted the photos, I got a lot of comments of people saying, wow, it must have been like minus 20 degrees Celsius, minus 10, but it was actually plus 1 degree Celsius. I don't know what that Fahrenheit is, but I'll put it down below here in Fahrenheit. I don't know it offhand. But it was, yeah, positive weather, and I think it's a good idea to aim for 0 degrees Celsius or below. That's when you're really gonna get this beautiful, well-formed breath coming out of the bird as it sings. I noticed as it was getting warmer, it just dissipates really quickly and it's not well-formed like you see in the photos that I showed. So aiming for freezing or below is a good starting point, but obviously when we're working with wildlife, it's usually not the ideal conditions. So I've had good success with 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. That's where I got my northern flicker shot. That was around 5 degrees Celsius. So it's possible, but you'll need these other conditions that I'm going to talk about to make it possible. All right, so the next most important condition is you need full sun. You need a really strong light source to illuminate the breath as it's coming out of the bird. And I tested this on an overcast day. There was some ravens that were calling out, and ravens are pretty large birds, and they were letting out a lot of breath. It was definitely cold enough, but there wasn't any sun, and the photos really didn't look that good. You couldn't see all that breath coming out of them. So I would just avoid overcast conditions. Ideally, you would get full sun. If you can't get full sun, try to get at least a mix of sun and clouds, because there might be a few moments where the sun actually peeks through. So full sun, cold enough, and the last condition is you don't want any wind, or you want very minimal wind. If it's too windy, either you're not going to see the breath at all, or it's just going to blow away really quickly. So definitely aim for a calm day. That way when the bird sings, you actually just get a beautiful, slow lifting of the breath. And that just gives you more time to capture that perfect moment just as the bird's singing. So now that we have those three conditions down, which are the three conditions that you need to get these photos, the next thing is talking about strategy. What do you do when you find a bird in these conditions? And first off, I would suggest getting to the park before sunrise, at least half an hour or an hour before sunrise. And what this allows you to do is you can just walk around, find out where the birds are singing, and especially if you're doing this in the spring or summertime, most birds are singing on their territories. So a bird that's singing at 5 in the morning, 25 minutes before sunrise, for example, is likely still going to be singing in that area at sunrise. And you're not just looking for any bird that's singing. You really want to find a bird that's singing in the right spot for this type of photo. And usually what that means is somewhere out in the open where when the sun actually rises, it's going to illuminate the bird, it's going to illuminate the breath. There's no trees or mountains or rocks or anything blocking the sun from illuminating the bird. So having it out in the open with a background that's dark enough, which that's so important. If you're pointing up to the sky, for example, you're not going to see any breath. You need to find the darkest background possible. Look around, try to figure out what that is. Conifers work really well. Dark trunks of trees work really well. Sometimes if the bird is low enough, you can angle it down so that the background is the dirt on the ground. So there's a few ways you can do it depending where you are, but just try to find the darkest background you can, because that's really going to make the breath pop. And while we're on the subject of backgrounds, make sure your background isn't too distracting. If your bird is really close to the edge of the forest, for example, and there's a bunch of branches behind it, even though it's singing and it's cold enough, you probably won't really see that breath too well. So try to just get a clean background, really dark background, and that's going to make a huge difference. And another tip that I'll give when it comes to strategy is have a plan A, B, C, D, because more often than not, your first option is usually not going to work out. So if you're there early enough, do a lap around the park, see where other species are singing, and have a few different options to jump to in case one situation doesn't work out. And this brings us to the next part, which is positioning. Where do you put yourself in regards to the bird? Where do you put yourself in regards to the sun? And the easiest thing is you need the bird to be backlit. So you want to have yourself, the bird, and the sun behind it. backlighting the bird and backlighting the breath. And when you have a nice backlight, you have a dark background, you have a clean background, no wind, a cold enough morning, that's when you get these photos. And if it's possible, get those photos right as the sun is rising. Those song sparrow photos that I put in that short song sparrow video that I made, the first one that you saw, which is that one with a nice deep orange, that one was taken a few minutes after sunrise. And that second photo that you're seeing, that one was taken 20 minutes after the first one. And you can just tell how different the colors are, how much more saturated the first one is. And I like that second image, but to me the first one is just so much better. To contrast this, then you go to the northern flicker shot, and to me the northern flicker shot is my favorite of the three. I think it's more also just the species. I didn't think I would capture the northern flicker breath, to be honest, but just the species is awesome. But I just like the quality of the light and the colors, and it provides still nice rim light around the bird. The breath is illuminated. It's not as punchy, the breath, I would say, as the first shot of the song sparrow, but I think that one's actually my favorite, and that was about 45 minutes after sunrise. So you can definitely experiment with different times in the morning to see what the breath looks like. Obviously, early spring, you're gonna have a much larger window to capture this than late spring or early summer. So get out there super early and get these shots. Next, I'll quickly talk about settings, but they're not really as important as you think. I got a lot of questions of people asking, was I using a really fast shutter speed? Was I using a really slow shutter speed? And I was between 1/250th and 1/640th for all the photos that I took. And I only posted a few in this video, but throughout those sequences, every time a bird would sing, I would just hold down that shutter and I would get somewhere between 20 and 40 images per song. So for a bird that's singing 10, 20 minutes, it really adds up. And you want to take these long bursts because you want to get that perfect moment when the breath just looks the best, and you can really go through each image and choose the one that you want. The most important setting is just to make sure that you're in high speed continuous so that every time the bird sings, you can take a burst of photos. When it comes to what ISO you should be at or what aperture, it doesn't really matter. It's more what your gear is, what you're comfortable with. At the end of the day, you just want the shot, so use whatever settings you need to capture that moment. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you get any photos like this, definitely tag me in them. I'd love to see them. It's just such a cool photo to get, and it gets really addicting, so you're welcome. I'll see you in the next video. Happy birding.